I'm Jim Tech. With me, Scott Dedels, and this is the Bitcoin Show, brought to you by Block Rewards, a payroll savings plan where, hey, you can get your employees involved in Bitcoin. How's that?
That's right, Jim. You're gonna get a job at Block Rewards one of these days if we're getting closer every day.
There you go. Bitcoin. Opportunity, I think, and here's the knock on the door right now. With everything that's going on, instability everywhere, we're going to put that headline up, I think, and where to find an island of financial security. Because right now in BC, with everything that's going on here with the couch and land decision, and like there's a claim in Kamloops, and there's more claims coming. I've interviewed Jeff Moyse, the Aboriginal lawyers that's worked for 6 governments here in BC in Aboriginal law, and he's still practicing now, about 33 years in that. And he's here at 3:45 again today. I think this is his 4th interview with me, talking about that couch and land decision, and the DRIPA and UNDRIPA, and the HIDA decision and all that stuff, and what that means to property owners here in BC. And then we put up the map a few times on the Really Big Show as well. And BC, and I think it's Nova Scotia or New Brunswick, have the biggest problems here. You can go find that map on our Really Big Show. But BC has, some cases they say over 100% land claims because there's overlapping claims. Even that couch and land decision, there's 3 claims on that land, including the people that actually hold the fee simple titles. And David Eby said he didn't inform the landowners because he said the courts promised that they wouldn't go after private lands. Turns out that promise wasn't worth much, or was it a promise? Who knows? David Eby definitely in the hot seat for that now. Well, British Columbians in the hot seat.
Yeah, it's wild, man. You can't have multiple claims on a title. And, I wrote a piece about this on LinkedIn and on X as well. And, it's not really a ton of consolation for homeowners who are caught up in this right now. But I do think that this is an example of something that exposes the risks associated with types of property. And I think in Canada, or the Western world, don't tend to think of these types of systemic risks to our property as being things that we really need to keep us awake at night. But this is really a perfect example of Bitcoin. To put it in the Bitcoin lens, Bitcoin is also property, and it offers the owners some benefits that are really, in many ways preferential to the kind of ownership that you get with physical property, specifically real estate. And obviously you can't live in your Bitcoin, but it's incredibly difficult to take away the benefits that comes with owning the Bitcoin as property compared to how easy it actually is for the rights and benefits that come with owning property, real estate as property. And so, Bitcoin is a non-physical thing that obviously it's almost incredibly difficult to be confiscated, in the literal sense. But this, what's happening with the couch and claim is, could potentially be viewed as sort of it's a different type of confiscation almost. And your ability to sort of prove ownership over your property, your ability to sell it in the open market, to leverage against it. These are kind of all things that are evolving in real time, but these are things that Bitcoin can do, and can do in many ways better. So if you put aside the idea that you need to live in this thing, there is a very compelling argument for people. There's going to be an evolution of the conception of what are the really important things in ownership of property and valuable property. And it's a really weird idea for a lot of people that this thing you can't hold in your hand or step inside could be the most valuable form of property in the world. But, another comparison, if you're thinking about Bitcoin compared to real estate, is that all the Bitcoin are equally desirable, which is not true for real estate. Condos in Regina are not comparable to condos in Miami Beach. And this is an asset that you also, that condo in Regina has a limited audience of potential buyers that are, related to people who either believe in that local market or live there. And so Bitcoin's global liquidity, you sort of assemble different aspects of something you might want to own. And then most importantly, the idea that taking it away from you or taking away the ownership of it is really, really hard. And that is something that I think people haven't really put a massive premium on here in Canada. I mean, we should have maybe been thinking about it when things started to get a little bit weird 4 or 5 years ago and they were freezing bank accounts. But this is kind of another wake up call for Canadians that diversifying into unconfiscatable assets is something worth investigating.
Yeah, the sad thing for the Richmond properties right now is, like I've talked to that lawyer several times, is there's a cloud over that property, and it'll likely take 5 to 7 years for this thing to play out to the the Canadian Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court won't even hear it until it's exhausted in the BC appeals courts, and so this could take a long time to play out. And when you go to mortgage a property, the bank wants, say you're in that industry actually, the bank wants a title. Hard to give them a title that has a bunch of different names on it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, and mortgages, like, they're 5-year terms, right? You might have a 30-year mortgage, but you renew it every 5 years. So 7 years is going to really put a lot of people in a very difficult position.
Yeah. And then, then you're trying to sell it, who's going to buy it? It's an owl property now. Who would buy it? And because unless you want to sell it for pennies on a dollar and somebody takes a gamble on it, but it's pretty tough. So the only recourse really, when I was talking to the lawyer, is sue the government. And you know what I mean? I don't know how much money this government has, but I don't think they have a lot. So just on those properties alone, you're talking a lot of money, in the billions. And then if you talk about BC in general, $3 trillion worth of properties, the government, this BC government, the Crown, and it calls into question the Crown as well. So if the Crown, who issues the land, because that's where the land comes from, the Crown owned all the land, so the Crown sold that land originally to the fee simple holder, and then whether he passed it on or not is he may be the original holder. So then they've been collecting tax on it, and did they have the right to sell it in the first place? So what happens now, right? What happens? And that land, not only is the Cowichan have a claim on it, but there's 2 other First Nations groups that are claiming the same land. Talk about a mess.
Yeah, it's a massive mess.
Yeah. So anyway, look at Bitcoin, and you say Bitcoin, and I've come late to the Bitcoin game. I mean, I think it was around 50,000 you and I started talking Bitcoin. I think around there, right? And and I look at the chart technically right now. Can you pull up that? I just put a screenshot there. If you can maybe pull that chart up. And I was saying to you a while ago, when all the big banks got in, JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley, all those big banks, that you're going to find that it's going to trade more. You're not going to have the amount of volatility. And the banks want that, right? Because they're going to move bigger clients in. And they don't want something that's 150 grand today and 100 grand tomorrow and 200 grand the next day and 50 grand the next day. So they're going to try and put stability in it. So Bitcoin dropped under that 100 grand today, which is that psychological number. But the whole market kind of sold off today. So you can expect that there was a downdraft. And again, when the big when the big money players are involved, can you put that on a 5-year chart there? Or even a 1-year chart? Put it on a 1-year chart, please. And you can kind of see there, if you look at that line there at the bottom there, that is that's touching. You see that 98 was touched there back in July sometime there too, right? So that would be, if you're a technical trader, you would look at that and say you buy that dip and then you wait for the thing, and there's a trading range in there. I mean, I'm just saying that's why Scott's thing works really well, because you're dollar cost averaging in. And if you put people on payroll savings plan, they're going to get some at 98, some at 120, some at different prices, and you're not too stressed about going all in at 150 or all in. You know what I mean? It's not like you're biting your nails, and you're just dollar cost averaging in on Bitcoin. And
yeah, I mean, it's the beautiful part about an asset that has a permanently fixed supply is when the price goes up, the amount your net worth goes up. When the price goes down, you're able to buy more. So it's either on sale or it's both sides are good if you really understand what you're trying to do when you're thoughtfully amassing or accumulating a position in Bitcoin. So, and I mean, put aside what's going on in the province and take a look at what's going on at the federal level here. And we have a $80 billion projected deficit. And it's like 20 years ago when the Harper government was running surpluses and significant surpluses. And we are, as like maybe it was a month ago, the in a parliamentary session warning that the budget was is in serious danger of collapsing the country, and now it's moving forward with this sort of it's a level of spending that I think should really just alarm people, and Canadians need to plan for ongoing devaluation of the loonie and diminishing purchasing power. So you really need, as a Canadian, I think you just have to be thinking about assets that can reliably outperform currency debasement, not whatever they tell you inflation is. And the expansion of the Canadian money supply is more like 8 to 10% a year. So if you want to just keep pace with the growth of the Canadian M2, you need assets that are going to do better than that. And there aren't a ton. Bitcoin has been one of those. And, so I think we're seeing a few different things line up. Obviously the other big news that happened this week politically was Trump's announcement about the tariff dividends that they're going to be issuing Americans $2,000 refund checks. And helicopter money has also historically been really good for Bitcoin. So when the last time they did this, they did a $1,200 stimmy check. And there are all kinds of memes all over the internet for people who put that $1,200 into Bitcoin. And it's worth about $20,000 right now. And you better believe that a lot of people are going to have this idea. I think a lot of people who, it's not a meaningful enough amount of money that it's going to probably, sustain you for all that long time. So you might as well put in Robinhood or, buy some Bitcoin. I think that will, this could be a very favorable thing for Bitcoin and the Bitcoin sentiment as this, as these different political decisions sort of roll out.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of stuff going on, and like the amount of investment that's gone to the United States. I mean, Donald Trump claims $18 trillion, but there is a lot of announcements that back up what he says too, and we're not seeing that here in Canada. Again, Mark Carney made some announcements today. I think 7 more projects today, and I think there was 5 in the past, but none of them have an oil pipeline where Canada's real wealth is. And a lot of these projects. We did Pierre Poilievre's speech here in Kelowna, and the only one thing I really got out of it is the Liberals are acting like a rooster. The sun's already coming up and they're crowing like they made it come up. So these projects were already in the works, right? So there was nothing fast-tracked, and we still don't have an oil pipeline. And the Canadian dollar, like you just said, the Canadian dollar does not look very healthy as well. The Canadian dollar is looking for an oil pipeline. It is looking for, can you tap, because our dollar is a resource-based dollar. I mean, there's no denying that. If you ask most economists and that have a shred of honesty, they'll tell you that it is a resource-based dollar. It's based on our commodities. And the more commodities we can put into market, the healthier that dollar is. And right now, it's looking for direction. It's looking for a confirmation of an oil pipeline. Because the rest of the stuff is like dribs and drabs and, they're, nickel mine and here or there, sprinkle this, sprinkle that. And, most of the projects that announced too also have detractors right away. We're suing you. And so it doesn't give a lot of stability to the Canadian dollar. And, there's some economists that are saying the Canadian dollar could go to 62 cents or lower. You want to talk about inflation then? Because everything is based in U.S. Dollars. Commodities are based in U.S. dollars. Whether you're buying whatever comes out of the U.S., especially the commodities. Oil, gas, gold, copper, silver, nickel, I don't know, whatever, you just name it. And even, fruit that comes from down south, they sell it in US dollars. They don't have a special price for Canada. You're buying grapes or cherries from Chile, they sell it to you in US dollars. We do the conversion. They're not just here's a special price for Canada. It's US dollars, right? Yeah. Even Teslas, they sell it in U.S. dollars, right? They just don't adjust the price every now and then. So the U.S. dollar has got some pretty big pricing power around the world. And one thing about Bitcoin, it is a commodity that is recognized worldwide. It has that stability. That is, around the world, there's not too many things that have a worldwide price. And I'm going to say gold, silver, the US dollar, but you know what I
Yeah.
mean? That it's convertible like that. You don't think anywhere in the world. You basically convert Bitcoin anywhere in the world, you convert gold anywhere in the world, silver. You can convert US dollars basically anywhere. You're not converting the Canadian dollar in most places. Like you can barely get it converted in Washington State. They're just like, we're not taking that, right?
Yeah,
Is that
totally.
not true? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
Mexico, lots of times when I was in Mexico, I tried to use it. They're just like, no, we don't know. What is that?
Snow peso.
Snow peso. Yeah, snow peso. No, thank you. Go to bank. Yeah, so I don't know, you know what I mean? Like diversification makes a lot of sense. And like I said, dollar cost averaging into assets makes even more sense, right? Like, you know, like if you believe, let's say, like pick a stock, if you like Tesla, you know, on days like today, you buy more. Do you know what I mean? Like if you believe in the story, if you believe in what's going on, then these are days of opportunity, not days to be scared, right? So that's the difference between, you know, like what you call a momentum trader and somebody that believes in what's going on. On days like today, you buy more
Yeah.
instead of getting scared and running for the hills. A lot of people still, you've got an event coming up though too, right? You've got an event coming up to demystifies Bitcoin because it is still
That's right. Yeah.
people, right?
Yeah, we just launched the ticketing today. It's happening on December 2nd, which is a Tuesday night at the Innovation Center. We've done a few events there now, and that will be sort of a 6:30 to 9:30 evening. Myself and Adam O'Brien, who is the CEO of another Canadian publicly traded Bitcoin company, Bitcoin Well, based out of Edmonton. So that will be sort of a few different presentations around, you know, a little bit of economics, a little bit of Bitcoin, a little bit of Bitcoin technology for businesses, and some Q&A. Should be a really good evening. Tickets are $20, but you get $20 in Bitcoin as a party favor for attending. So limited seating. I think we got about 100 spots for about 100.
Well, there you go. That seems like a pretty fair deal. Hey,
Yeah.
you need a moderator.
Yeah, totally. You want to be one? Is that a volunteer, Jim?
It is. There you go. I love Bitcoin now. Again, I was a big skeptic when we started this show, and I think some of the people that were following this are just like, can Scott turn him? Right? Because big gold bug from way back when. I'm still a big believer in gold. Buying gold since I think about $200 US an ounce since the first Iraq war there when George Sr. went in there for that excursion or whatever he wanted to call it. What was that? Desert Storm? That's what they called it. Desert Storm, and I was like, holy cow, this is crazy. So I bought gold, and I started buying gold as a youngster and started accumulating gold as a little guy. And, you know, I'd go into the banks and I'd buy gold, and they're just, what are you buying that for? They would say, they'd laugh at you, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think we were talking about this on a show recently, 2 weeks ago or maybe a month ago. Like, basically now with what gold's done since September, buying gold has been smarter than buying the index, than buying the S&P 500 over over that time since you started buying gold, which is incredible.
Yeah. Gold has been, I mean, throughout Roman days, and I'll just use this example, Roman days, an ounce of gold bought you a full suit of armor. That's what you would get. You would get a sword, a shield, and all your armor for an ounce of gold. In 1929, when gold was pegged at $35 an ounce, you could outfit yourself with a pretty fancy suit, watch, tie, all that stuff. That was kind of your new armor for the business world. And I would say today in Canadian dollars, it's like well over $5,000 an ounce, and you get yourself a pretty good suit for $5,000 and a watch, and you know, your new business armor. You can get yourself a smartwatch, and you know, maybe a couple of devices, on one of those Google glasses or whatever you want to call. But you know what I mean? Like that, it's retained its buying power. It's retained its buying power, and that is, you know, a lot of people. If you listen to some of the you know, the people higher profile financial profiles out there, Kathy Wood, Tom Lee, I can't remember all these guys, Morgan Stanley, and they're talking about that. You know, they'll say that that Bitcoin is the digital gold, and in a way that it's even surpasses it on that it's the network you're buying, and that is what AI is going to want, is this network, right? And that is the thing that sometimes is hard to get your head around, right? Is the network, right? Like in this AI world, and I think, you know, that's the thing I had a little trouble coming around to is the network of moving money around is what is important, right? When we talk about Tesla now, Elon has said they have self-driving cars. So it's this this transparent transactional kind of like time that's coming up, right? We're at the precipice of it, where you can just get into the Tesla robotaxi, and it just takes the money. You know what I mean? Like, so you're not doing this, you're not swiping, you're not doing anything, and it's whether you're in Canada or Dubai or wherever you are, it's the same transaction, right? You're not doing exchanges and stuff like that. And I think that is the strength of this Bitcoin on the Lightning Network and all these other things. I think
that's really what this is. I think, Jim, what you were talking about with the gold and the ounce of gold and the suit of armor or suit of clothes is relates to the hardness of money, right? When the hardness of money is the ability to retain value over time, and it relates to how difficult it is to find that money or produce it, right? Hard money is typically valuable because it's hard to come by. And this is the opposite of Canadian dollars. It's like they're very easy to come by. They're very easy to create, and they're always creating more of them, and that's why they're always worth less. Bitcoin is, it is harder than gold because its issuance schedule is fixed, and no amount of additional Bitcoin miners can speed up or produce more Bitcoin, which is not true of gold. Like, if the gold price was 10,000 an ounce tomorrow, they would be climbing Mount Everest to mine gold, the top of Mount Everest. Eventually every gold mine becomes financially viable at certain gold prices, right? So Bitcoin offers that, and it offers it over a long period of time. And this, I think that, what an important thought for listeners to really think about what you're talking about with the networks is that historically, like throughout the entirety of gold being money, the human civilization has converged on gold's properties as making it sort of the dominant, monetary store of value. And if we're thinking about payments and imagining that this Bitcoin network operates with a system of money that is as valuable or potentially more valuable over time in the same way, then all of the payments are going to converge on that network. It won't make sense to run multiple payment networks. It's the same reason we don't have multiple internets. There's one internet. And what Bitcoin, the best way to really think about Bitcoin is it's the native currency of the internet. It's the native payments layer of the internet. And that's a pretty big thing, right? It's money that can't be confiscated. It can't be censored. It settles finally, instantly if you're using Lightning. These are all things that on their own would be really significant disruptions to the way money works, and it's kind of happening all at once. And we'll just wait until the AIs get a hold of it, and you'll be seeing money get streamed in a way that is, it's like something out of the future.
So gold was the currency of choice back then. They called it hack gold nut too. The Vikings would hack off a piece of gold, and that's why gold is nice soft too. They would test it by biting it. If they could make tooth marks in it, they would know it was gold. But then they invented money because it was hard to transact gold, plus people would steal it. And then that's why money was invented, and it was backed by gold. So you had to have the reserves to back your money. And then, like after the Nixon there took them off the standard there, the Bretton Woods Agreement. And then they discovered that, hey, we can have some fun with this because we can inflate the money supply. So they do intentionally inflate money. They intentionally, because it has a target rate, and sometimes it's over that target. They have a target rate of 2%. They target 2%. And, the last little while, it's been a lot higher than the target rate. And so they intentionally inflate money. And that is part of where you get asset bubbles.
The system isn't broken. It's working perfectly. The system is designed to devalue the money that you've earned and paid taxes on through the creation of money that didn't exist while you were earning that money. Oh. And that system incents us all to have to do something with our money, right? If it's melting, you can't just sit on it. And that makes us want to invest or take risks or consume. And all of these things, they're all drivers that lead back to the desirability of Bitcoin. Because, if you think about Bitcoin in the same way as buying gold, you're not really speculating on a company or a sector, right? What you're doing is you're buying something that is very rare and difficult to produce under the assumption that over time, that thing will become more valuable to more people as more people understand that their money that they're forced to use from the government becomes worth less all the time as they're continually creating more of it. And so in this way, I think when we talk about Bitcoin savings plan in the workplace, it's really a much simpler thing to do. If you're just saving your money, then you're not actually gambling it in the stock market or on certain companies and leaderships or geographic regions of the world. You're just saving, and saving in gold objectively has been a superior strategy than gambling on the stock market. And I think this is what's going on with Bitcoin now. And people, if given the choice and they understood that that's really like how easy it is, a lot of people would make that choice because more people are savers than they are gamblers. It's just that we're forced to be gamblers because of how fast our money loses value in the system. And that problem accelerates as debt piles up, as government debt piles up, and as spending gets more and more reckless. So, I think all of those things are true. And if we go back to the start of the show, what we're talking about with real estate, now add on top of that this thing that you're saving in is really next to impossible to be taken away from you, and nobody can inflate it. It's a pretty compelling argument.
Yeah, I would say, and then one thing I wanted to add on inflation, though, and the money supply, is inflation is the friend of the very wealthy. Inflation inflates assets, right? And typically, it's the very wealthy that own a lot of assets, as opposed to when we look at, like the people just getting by. And if you just put cash in your mattress, and I'll give you an example of this: if you moved to Kelowna in 1998 and bought a house for $250,000 and then buried $250,000, and then also put $250,000 worth of gold in a hole, and Bitcoin wasn't around then, but if you bought Bitcoin at that time, today, that house is worth, in the million plus range. The cash is still worth $250,000, but it buys a whole lot less, right? You can't even buy, like a shed in Kelowna for $250,000. So that shows you what the cash just sitting there does, basically nothing. And if you had bought Bitcoin early on, when was it? When was the first day that Bitcoin showed up on the?
2009. But I think the housing is such a good comparison because houses have been a good place to put your money in BC for sure over the last 10 years. But if you think about it in Bitcoin terms, they've still been losers because everything is. And a house was 1,000 Bitcoin 10 years ago, and right now it's 6.
Yeah. No, so hard assets, and it's the thing, I would just take a look at it, and Bitcoin, it took me a while to figure out how important the network is, right? And go listen to some of the, the big people out there and just understand the network and what this means in how the new world will work. And it starts to make a whole lot of sense, right? I know there's some other stable coins out there and stuff like that too. Kathy Wood did adjust her target. Kathy Wood, I really like Kathy Wood from ARK Invest. Yeah. She adjusted her target from 1.6 million, I think, down to 1.3 because she says that some of the stable coins are, accelerating as well. So, it remains to be seen where those end up. But Tom Lee pumps Ether, I think, too, Ethereum. But, and again, and I would say this too, and we talked about it last time, closeology. Why not buy the real deal first before you start playing closeology, right?
Yeah, totally. I think, like I said, the better you understand Bitcoin, I think that some of these, stablecoin networks or other crypto payment networks will be stops along the road. Ultimately, the world will converge on a single network the same way it converged on one internet. And this is just the way it works. That's why there's only one Facebook. That's why there's only one YouTube.
Oh, there was one thing called MySpace. Remember that?
Yeah.
So same thing as Subway and Mr. Sub, right? So there is the dominant player just takes over and eats everybody's lunch. There's only one EV player in the market too. That event, if you want to learn more, I advise you go back and watch all the Bitcoin shows me and Scott have done. But that event is what? Let's tell that again. What's the date? December 2nd?
Yeah, it's December 2nd at the Innovation Center, and maybe we can put the Eventbrite link in the show notes, Jim.
Sure, we can do that. And then when we do the story too, we'll put it in there. And then again, it's basically a free ticket, which is even better. You get your first bit of Bitcoin. Are you going to set people up with a Lightning wallet, or how are you going to get them their Bitcoin?
Yeah, actually, it's Bitcoin Well that is running on that half of it. So registrants are going to get that through Bitcoin Well.
Awesome. So there you go. And then if you don't want your Bitcoin at the end of the show, I'll take it.
We can probably figure that too, Jim.
All right. I think that's good for today, though. And, like we're on every couple of weeks. So if you want to learn more about it, you can always get a hold of Scott. And if you're interested for your employees that are asking, I mean, it's a great retention thing. Scott's been in the benefits arena for a long time doing like typical benefits. And this is just an extension of that.
Yeah, and we'll be talking about that somewhat on the evening the 2nd as well. It's going to be a really good event, and I think everybody, if you're listening, if you're interested, Bitcoin is not going anywhere. 2026 is going to be a great time to. People think they're late. It's never too late. We're still early. Everyone who's thinking about Bitcoin right now is early. And it's really going to be a great use of an evening to educate yourself and start forming an opinion if you don't have one already.
When's the best time to buy Bitcoin 10 years ago, and what's the second best time right now?
Exactly.
Anyway, that's it. Thank you for watching Now Media.